Hi, everybody. It's a big pleasure to be live today with How to Lead Now in our first episode of the Personal Lead Series. So my name is Marco Hauen. I am a strategic life coach for entrepreneurs and executives and today's host of How to Lead Now. So I am particularly excited to kick off this Personal Lead Series with an amazing human being, which I had the honor and pleasure to meet during our coaching school experience. And even so, it was a Zoom We were still able to catch up and really to bond. So I'm very happy to have Amor Muto today here. So a few words before I let you introduce yourself. So serial entrepreneur, successful businessman, motivational speaker. I really have the impression that you lived already several lives, and I would love you to just tell us, how do you want to represent yourself today?
Today, I represent myself as love change, I guess, is the best way to describe it. I work with young and old people, everybody who is dealing with change and wants to get good at it. And I always use a quadrant that is very simple. It has to do with internal and external change and wanted and unwanted change. I guess this year we all got to experience a lot of unwanted change.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of work around energy management. And I guess the importance of realizing how much energy it takes to deal with unwanted change,
Yeah.
and realizing that as you have to invest time and energy into creating wanted change, there is this gratification and like some energy that you get from creating wanted change. Realizing what you have to do to be able to deal with unwanted change. Like I myself, I broke my neck when I was 25, and I had to deal with a completely different body, which requires a lot of energy because it hurts so much, physically, emotionally, mentally sometimes. Realizing that you have to find a source of energy for yourself is something that I stand for, and I hope in my career, my new career as a coach and as a speaker and as a trainer, to help people make burnout a thing of the past, make over exhaustion a thing of the past, to really create a sustainable way we manage ourselves as humans.
Beautiful, and thank you for sharing also the setbacks in your life, which is a major one. I know. So maybe one question: when we prepared for the interview, you said that your personal leadership philosophy is radical self-inquiry. How do you link radical self-inquiry to what you just shared with us about your physical change you had to go through?
The biggest gain, I believe, that we can have as adults is to acknowledge our emotions and feelings at the core. There are so many layers of how we present ourselves and how we think we should behave, or what people might perceive us to be like. So a simple sentence, "I am tired," is something that I personally push down to the bottom of my shoe. I will not admit that I am tired. I am in it to win it, and it's not going to happen. And that's a very simple example, but I believe in leadership. Personally, I am a much more gentle and humane leader to myself, towards others, if I am willing to acknowledge the whole spectrum of emotions and not just the good ones.
Beautiful. You talk about gentle and humane leadership style. Could you describe it a little bit when it comes to personal leadership style?
Yeah, I think my journey, I remember writing letters to myself about slacking or procrastinating, and they were always kind of a sergeant tone of enough of the nonsense, and now we're going to get to it, and no more TV and relaxation until you have your things done, and a very strict personal leadership way, which tremendous results. I kid you not, but the source of energy was always very destructive. It was anger driven and very lacking of self love. While nowadays I practice myself, and I teach my clients as well to understand that you will be able to finish the marathon with a great time if you allow yourself to feel the pains that you're feeling from participating, and taking care of injuries on time instead of postponing it until they become disastrous. So I always make the example of like resilience. What makes a boxer get up after the opponent just punched them down? Okay,
Yeah.
you got the judge is counting, and you have to decide to yourself: do I get back up? Is the same guy in the ring that just punched me down? What are my odds of surviving the round? While in reality, you are the only person in the ring. You are dealing with yourself. So if you fall, you can point outside and say, "Life crushed me. Life made me fall." Or you can look to yourself and what have I been building up through the years that made me stumble like this?
Yeah.
And am I standing up new? Am I learning something? Am I staying down long enough? Like, I feel like staying down or standing still are things that I personally had a great allergy towards. I felt like the world was outpacing me if I had to stand still. And I guess in the new revelations that I have, I really understand that there is tremendous value and growth in actively standing still.
Okay. Yeah, that's beautiful. What comes up for me is a question around standing up. Now, I can imagine, maybe it's my interpretation, but I can imagine that it wasn't always easy to stand up.
No.
How did you do it? What
Um,
were the thoughts which made you stand up?
um, I think the standing up isn't even the hardest part, but when you hit the ground, how hard will you let that hit you? So if you're very related to your ego, and then you're suddenly at the bottom, you're like, oh no, I was A, B, and C, and now I am not. And that is like super intense
Yeah.
personally. Um, I think if you do not have that, and this is something that you can practice, is just an exercise. Everything that you put your chest upright and makes you proud of yourself, grab a lighter, put it on fire, let it burn down to the ground, go back to zero. It is a human capability. I will not be like, I am better at it than you are. It is a very humane thing to get up again, because you cannot stop breathing or stay down. It is not a nice place to be. And I think one of the biggest insights I had in my deepest depressions was that giving up is really a hard thing to do, because you have to do it. You have to do it day in, day out for the rest of your life.
I love that. That's a beautiful way of explaining this one. Giving up is very difficult to do. Yeah.
I think on long
Actually,
term,
yeah.
it is.
It's interesting because in essence, what you say, giving up or going on is the same effort. You have to decide it every day to do it.
Beautiful.
Rather, and yeah, well, you are the guy who gets up. That's for sure. So I think it's very powerful what you just said. Now, when you talk about the fact that you let go of your ego, that this ego is so important, or letting go of the ego is so important.
Mhm.
And as we talk about leadership, how do you link it to your leadership style? So it's like you talk about radical self-inquiry, but if you talk about ego, how do you link that?
Um, I think this link that I feel with the ego is I have experienced many times that I thought I was done with my ego. I was able to
Yeah.
extract myself from it, and then give it a couple of weeks, and I was tricked by it again. So it is. I feel like almost necessary for our consciousness to create an ego to deal with the world, because it relates to other people and other things. And um, if you really sit in the self, then you're like, hey, I'm fine, I am everything, I'm everywhere, and I am all the time. um, but realizing that all the suffering that you can experience in life is a quality of your ego, and that you are
Yeah.
not your ego, makes it much easier in crisis situations where I feel like leadership is very important, to not identify with the crisis, but to take a step back and still look at the situation from gratitude that we are still breathing. Like an ego
Yeah.
can step into a victim mind state, while in my perspective, the only victims are the ones who are not here anymore. They are gone. So whatever happened took away life from them. Um, in all the other cases, you are a survivor, and you can be a happy or a sad survivor. That's a real choice.
Again, a beautiful analogy linking victimhood with the fact that you're physically not there anymore, and at the end, and the rest is everybody who's there is a survivor. It's very simple, but very nicely said. I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Thank you.
Very beautiful, very beautiful. And so,
I want to
so yeah,
add a
please.
little bit on that, Marco. I'm sorry. The reason why I say these things, and they are tough discussions to have for me at home, because, for instance, my father has been in prison in Iran for 7 years, before the revolution, after the revolution. So the
Yeah,
concept of being a victim or not is something very heavy in my household. To
yeah,
say to him, you are a survivor, and he also knows when he was
yeah.
in jail, 12,000 people got executed. So he is a survivor, and he has to deal with a lot of trauma. But to have a conversation with people who have not experienced these things, in the gravity of it and the darkness of the part of life that is not shining in the sun and like beach and palm trees, but really very uh, situations that make you search for meaning, because why am I going through all these things? um, to still, for me myself, I remember saying to my father, okay, you are in prison for 7 years, it is now my 8th year that I am in a wheelchair. At the beginning I thought this 7 year will be a breaking point or something, but I am happy to tell you I am liberated now. I do not experience this as a confinement any longer.
Wow, that's beautiful. And you said something very interesting before, and you said on one hand side there is this solving the ego, on the other side we need ego.
Mm.
The question is leading, but how do you keep it in check? What do you do specifically? Because you're aware, self-inquiry, so you're aware
Mm.
of your ego. What do you do to keep it in check?
I guess one of the um, practices. I facilitate yoga nidra, but I participate in it myself as well. Is deep meditation, to experience consciousness without your memory, without your body, without your thoughts, but just to
Mhm.
be. Besides that, keeping it in check. I always feel like when I am engaging in life very ego driven, then a very high level of competition takes place in my head. like there is not enough cake for everybody, and I have to take my piece of the cake as soon as possible. And I recognize this, and it drives stress. I almost feel like the source of stress in my life mostly is my ego. If I'm able to let go of my ego, then I can live a pretty stress-free life. So keeping it in check has to do with recognizing what forms and influences show that I am living very ego driven, or thinking or behaving. So I really, I think the biggest thing I had learned also in my relationship, to say this is one of my thoughts. It is not something I chose to think of. It just popped up in my head. I don't even know what I think of this thought yet, but it is something that's going through my head, and not to feel bad about it.
Yeah,
I don't know if
beautiful.
that answers your question.
No, no, no. It's it's always about. It's like you can still talk about surrender or let go of the ego, or you can still talk about accepting it and seeing it and somehow laugh about it and say, okay, well, that's how Amor is, and that's not how I am. So it's like having this detachment,
Exactly.
and that is what you're alluding to when you talk as you talk. So now now we talked to, so I think we could talk for the next 2 hours only on that. But for the sake of what we wanted to go through today,
Yeah.
I would love to talk a little bit about your professional, like the leadership when it comes to professional environments. Now you created companies, you ran companies, you ran startups, so you have quite a big experience in managing people. And when we prepared, I got a little bit an idea around it. So I have a question to you. So
Yeah.
what has the author of the book Principles from Ray Dalio to
Mhm.
do with your personal leadership philosophy?
Um, the insights that I received from how Ray describes his leadership style is um, really, I do not look up to people very quickly, nor do I look down on them. I see everything and everybody at eye level. Um, but to realize that not everybody looks at the world in that way. And if you want to have an organization that functions in that way, that everybody's looking each other eye to eye, and is willing to have discussions without feeling threatened, is really something that you have to create. So um, because I never applied for a job myself after university, I always had an own business, with or without employees, with or without partners.
Mhm.
I never understood the frame of mind that is thinking, okay, this is my superior, I have to behave in a certain way in front of this person. It never came up in my head. And it is also one of my weaknesses, because I never show up differently than I am, and I, yeah, might benefit from being more polite in some instances and biting my tongue, or uh, speaking out in other instances. So this is something that I am realizing now, also due to my girlfriend, who is also explaining the different cultures. So in different cultures, there's different levels of hierarchy, there's different ways of getting things done. I think I am slightly like a child in that sense, because I have never experienced corporate culture set up by Anglo-Saxon managers, or different type of managers. So I really lack this awareness, and I think this is also an area where I can truly grow, because I believe the way I step into it as all equal, we all have the same senses and the same brain. Maybe you read a couple of more books than me. That's valuable. Let's add these things together without a sense of competition internally. Is something you really have to facilitate and create inside a company. Apparently, it's not that easy. Otherwise, everybody would have done it.
It definitely isn't. That's a whole series of webinars and interviews and itself. How to handle that.
Exactly.
But you talk about radical truth and radical transparency as your leadership philosophy when it comes to professional. Now, myself, I went quite deep into these discussions because I come from a blockchain angle and so on. So what I want to ask is, how do you see radical truth and radical transparency working in an and it doesn't have to be corporate environment, because what Ray does is totally crazy, and it took him also 30 years to be where he is today, or 40. But talking about in your environment, how do you see radical truth and radical transparency being put in place in an environment, in a professional environment?
The best example I have for you right now is with my life partner, my girlfriend Katerina. We also got intertwined business-wise. And then we experienced many instances that there is an idea, a business idea, a concept. One person thinks it's a good concept, the other person thinks it's a bad concept. In that moment, I choose to be truthful and transparent about what I think is bad about it. The journey we have to take is that she, as the founder of that idea, feels personally rejected because the idea is not accepted. And what I feel like is a big part of this radical truth and radical transparency is to, at the same time, to say the idea I disagree with, but it has nothing to do with what I think of you as a person. And this is something I have experienced in most of my partnerships, that people can get personally offended while we are talking about a matter that has nothing to do with the person, in my experience. But I am also guilty of it. If I am working on something and somebody tells me, this is complete nonsense, waste of time, it definitely hits me emotionally. I'm like, oh my God, I put all this time and effort, and I think this idea is my idea, and I am the source. So if the idea is bad, then the source is bad. And I think the ability to have these conversations and walk out almost satisfied and feeling richer is a very high level of skill, to be detached from your ego also.
Yeah, and it's what comes up for me when you say it's like, I feel that there is a hierarchy. There comes radical transparency, and then there comes radical truth, because you have to be first, before you can be really truly truthful. You have to be transparent. You cannot try to be truthful and somehow have lack of transparency. So that's for sure something that comes up. Is, how do you see that? Is that something you see also, or you see it differently?
I completely agree with you, and I think these two pillars, radical truth and radical transparency, they need a foundation. And that foundation, I believe, is to whatever relationship it is, even if it is the one with yourself, that the foundation is love, that there is no bad intent, that there is only a wish for seeing you shine, grow, become better. So all the things that come out of my mouth in the radical truth or transparency are based on that love, that I want the best for you. And I think in heated discussions we forget that. And
yeah, that's what makes it so difficult in corporates. It's like, if you start a startup and you have and you start up a company with some partners, you can put that at the beginning, you can put it in place, and still very heavy and difficult to keep it in place, because, well, we're humans. But if the intentions are right, it's possible. True. Now, if you are a corporate and you have 30,000 people all over the world, and you want to put in place radical transparency, good luck. So I will not say it's impossible. It's all a matter of resolve, but you really have to go deep, because people, as I see it always, people are not used to that, so they don't trust. It's like if you for 20 years work into a corporate environment and you got shut down, you had good ideas, you were shut up for, and so on and so on, and then there is a boss coming and say, hey, as of today, radical transparency, no problem, you can say whatever you want, you will have everything. He will say, nice, now show me. Show me that I will not be hit by that. And what comes up for me is Ray Dalio in his book talks about this guy who makes his company lose something like $70 million because he forgot to set a marker for an investment. And that himself, he asked himself, I wanted to fire the guy, but then I said, shit, if I do that now, everything goes down the drain because I tell them that they have the right to do mistakes. Well, that was a big mistake, but still, and he is got good intent. He didn't do it because he didn't work well. Also, he is a good guy. I cannot fire the guy. And he turned it around and used, together with him, created procedures which were created so that this cannot happen again. So it's incredibly important that you walk your talk at that moment as the leader of that company. And
beautiful example.
And then again, it's still a little company. What maybe they have 200 or 500 people today, so it's still a little company in regards to the to the Microsofts or the bigger companies in the world. So yeah. No, very interesting. But what I also was really interesting is maybe last topic to tackle before we wrap up is when I asked what are the biggest obstacles in leadership you encounter. So you talked a lot about boundaries and creating boundaries so that you really can be truthful and you really can be transparent. Can you explain that better? Can you explain that more?
The best example I have for it is the same message can come to me in a couple different ways, and there are a couple ways that will land well with me, and there are a couple ways that like rub against my hairs. And in interacting with people, I guess a big part of boundaries is to let people know my weak spots, to let people know the where my tail is, and when it gets stepped on, I will react poorly. It's not something that I am proud of. Is just a part of me that I cannot deny. So I believe boundaries is not per se the definition of don't cross this line, but as we are all multidimensional beings, certain routes will get better results with me, and certain routes are going to end up in maybe 2 or 3 days of struggle, and then with this kind of face. So yeah, we're saying the same thing. Yeah, okay, we're saying the same thing. Well, as the intentions are good, I think it's beautiful to share with people what you have learned about yourself, your own manual that you received when you became 18. Like, this is how you operate. Well, as you've been revising that manual, sharing that with people, I believe, is a big part of boundaries, so to say, because as people realize and notice about you, they might even remind you at days that, hey, maybe you are going down the rabbit hole that you said that you don't want to go down. So I believe there is a lot of trust in the people that you are working and collaborating with to share that, and that's being vulnerable. That's saying I am not perfect. That's saying I have bad days. That's saying sometimes I need help, support. These are all things that we might not look for under the tag leadership, but I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. What comes up for me is that for me, it's about like I'm one of these guys. I don't want to work totally alone. Like I like to work and play ideas and so on. And if I don't have that feeling that that's happening, now I learned to talk about it, and I say, listen, I need that now. Because it's on the it's been vulnerable, but it's also boundary in a sense. Because for me, the not setting that is the boundary, is that I go down rabbit hole and I start to question everything and so on. So I have to set for me that boundary. That's that's for me, which is important. So it's a little bit the other way around, but it's still very sounds for me. Listen, I think we are really too short in 30 minutes for our interviews. But as I propose to do that 30 minutes, let me ask you maybe one last thing. Maybe with such an incredible vita, such an incredible experience, such hardship and such incredible victories you had in your life.
Thanks so much.
What would be one advice, one thing you would like to share with people, saying, hey, take this on?
I think it comes back to this giving up talk we had. It's okay to be tired. That's, I feel like, the biggest punishment people put upon themselves, is to deny recovery and rest, and also label the thoughts and emotions that one has when we are tired as toxic or non-productive. Like, it is very normal to be grumpy when you're hungry or tired. So when you're grumpy, maybe you need a break or a snack, and that's a very basic thing to say, and doesn't sound very profound. But I think if you notice that you are reacting poorly to the world, then you deserve some rest. Probably you'll show up with a better attitude.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I will for sure not add something to these beautiful words, because they are, as they are. Thank you so much. Actually, what I didn't say, thank you so much for taking this from Colombia. So taking this interview from Medellin. And looking forward to have you in Europe back in some weeks. And hopefully we can catch up again and maybe do another interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marco. Looking forward to the next episodes, and see you soon in the Europe.
Thank you.